put it in the chat. But I will now call our meeting to order. I would ask that anybody who does speak to remember to please identify yourself, your name, your title, your institution. And I would ask everyone, if you're not speaking, to please remember to silence your phone or mute yourself. We'll start with action agenda item number 1, the minutes of the January 28th regular meeting. They begin on page 1.1 of our agenda book. Are there any questions or any changes to these minutes? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the January 28th, 2022?
Yes, I move they be accepted as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Carr. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. McNeil. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all. Information agenda item number 2, our director's report. Dr. Markham will present her director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. My full report for the activities in my office are located in your board materials. You'll notice that the travel season is upon us, and I feel like we've all been separated physically for so long that it feels great to be back out on campus. I've visited, I believe, 6 universities in the last 2 weeks. I am making it my goal to visit all of our college campuses over the summer, have some FaceTime with all of our presidents and chancellors, as well as their local legislative delegations. So those meetings are going really well, and I really enjoyed seeing everyone face to face again. We have 3 new staff members. We have Tracy Harrell. She is now working in academic affairs, primarily with private and career education. She comes to us from Southeast Arkansas College. We stole her away from Dr. Bloomberg, and she has really hit the ground running. She's very skilled, has a lot of knowledge in higher ed. So we welcome Tracy. Also, we have Melissa Siegel. She joins our financial aid team. Her background was at University of Arkansas Pulaski Technical College. She has a background in Arkansas financial aid, and we are already getting lots of great customer service type reviews from her. She's doing a really good job serving our students. Kim Walker also joined this month in April. She is our new accounts operating manager. Stanley left us for UAMS a couple of months ago, and she has stepped into his place. She has a lot of great background in accounting operations management, so we welcome Kim as well. As most of you have heard, we are moving. Our offices are moving across the street to the Main Street Mall. We will be on the 3rd floor. All of our staff members will be together for, I guess, the first time, all on one floor. So that move is planned next month. We hope to be over there before the beginning of the new fiscal year. So be patient with us. Things are, you know how moving goes. We're going to be a little in disarray for a couple of weeks, but we're hoping that we won't have any interruption in our operations as far as service to students and service to our institutions. At the last regular board meeting, Kevin Anderson, board member Anderson, asked us to look at program efficiencies for the state. Since that time, we've had several conversations about what we could provide to the board. We're going to look at several existing data elements that we already have in a way that we can layer all those together and come up with some recommendations for our institutions. We're going to look at program viability. We're going to look at our program productivity report and also our strategic plan. Board member Carr mentioned this a couple of times, those targets. Are we filling our programs? Do we have programs with vacancies? What is our capacity? And then we're also going to be looking at our strategic plan, looking forward at what our workforce demands will be for various occupations that require degrees or credentials in those programs of study. And we will be coming back to the board with some recommendations. Those will probably look like, things we need to add so many programs in a certain occupation. We won't necessarily say which institution needs to do it, or which institution needs to delete a program if it looks like we have low capacity in those programs. Also, if something needs to be retooled, if we expect rapid growth somewhere, we will be providing some recommendations to the board with the hope that at that point conversations will happen amid and among institutions about if we need to rearrange some chairs on the ship or maybe remove a few chairs. So that will be coming in our July meeting. At this time, I'm going to ask Alana to come back on. We've had some questions in the last couple of meetings about the out-of-state institutions who are offering programs within the state of Arkansas, either physically or online. Alana Bowles has been our program officer for Sarah, as well as out-of-state for-profit institutions that have made application to come to the state. So I asked her to put together a little bit of information for everyone on what those requirements look like and what she looks at when prior to presenting those applications to the board. So Alana, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So as you know, the board has oversight of out-of-state and private institutions that want to offer online programs to Arkansas students, and establishing new physical campuses. So that is they only make application to the board and to ADHE if they're not in a reciprocity agreement, such as the state authorization reciprocity agreement, which I'll mention in a few minutes. Institutions must be accredited by a regional or national accrediting agency in order to be considered for approval and certification by the board. Next slide. So when an institution applies for certification or approval for the first time, we collect a lot of information about the institution's relationship with their accreditor. If they're approved in their home state, we look at the cost of attendance and the history of the institution, the admission requirements, any advising that's available to the students, any financial aid that's available, and also if the program is like, say, a nursing program or an education program, we look to see if that program also has programmatic accreditation before we or as we consider it. Next slide. Institutions must pay $500 per program to be certified. Their certification is good for 3 years, and then they're up for recertification. When they're up for recertification, the institution has to send us their financial information and audit, so we can look to see if they are still stable financially, because we don't want our Arkansas students enrolling in an institution that's about to close. So we look at that. Institutions, they need to follow the faculty requirements that Arkansas public institutions have to require. We look at credit hour requirements. They have to report every time they change anything in their tuition prices. So those are some of the things, requirements that they have. A little bit about the state authorization reciprocity agreement. Most institutions that are offering online programs to Arkansas students, you never see in the board book because they are part of this reciprocity agreement. This is a national agreement. Every state but California is in the agreement. 38 Arkansas institutions are now in Sarah. I believe that if you talk to any of those institutions, they would be glad because they don't have to pay each state to be able to enroll their students. So anyway, this is a good thing, I think, for institutions in Arkansas. So are there any questions?
Okay, thank you, Alana. And that's the end of my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Markham. I can't say how happy I am to see us have the ability to go back out and make those institution visits. I know you've been burning up the roads, making those again, but I look forward to when we can have this meeting back in person as well. Thank you
Yes,
all
sir.
for your
And
hard work.
I believe we are planning the July meeting to be face-to-face. However, we are going to be in search of a location because our new building is likely not going to have a room that's suitable for a full board meeting. So this may be, the July meeting may be on one of our college campuses. So we'll be getting back to you on that.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Dr. Markham? Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 3. Dr. Markham will present the rules governing the Governor's Higher Education Transition Scholarship Program. Dr. Markham.
Yes, and this is a new program. It's not one that you would have been aware of because this was a program that was introduced during the fiscal session. Representative Brian Evans introduced this as a budget bill. There was some special language that created it. This will be a scholarship for students with developmental and intellectual disabilities to attend one of the 4 accredited transition programs within the state. We were directed to create the rules around this, and that's what you see here. So the 4 institutions that are currently accredited are Arkansas State University, University of Arkansas, UA Pulaski Technical College, and South Ark Community College. So those 4 institutions will be able to serve students who have those disabilities, and those students will be able to take advantage of this scholarship. So we're putting the rules out for you to review, and then they'll go out to public comment in the same manner as all of our administrative rules. So you have that information, board members, in your packet. And I'm happy to answer questions about that if you have them.
Are there any questions for Dr. Markham? I believe this is an action item. Do I hear a motion to approve the rules governing the Governor's Higher Education Transition Scholarship Program?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 4. Dr. Markham will present the rules governing the Star Spangled Banner Act. Dr. Markham.
Yes, sir. These are the rules for the Star Spangled Banner Act. There were no, this is the same set of rules that you saw in a previous meeting and reviewed. As a result of public comment, there were no changes. So now we are presenting this to you for adoption to be moved on to the Legislative Council.
I move that it be accepted.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all. Agenda item number 5. Mr. Nick Fuller will present the productivity funding distribution policy changes. Mr. Fuller.
Thank you. This is the policy for the distribution of productivity funding each year to the institutions. This is an amendment. There are some minor technical changes in portions of it at the beginning, but the main focus of this amendment is there was one paragraph that talks about if any institution's general revenue funding declines by more than 5% from the initial year, which was 2018, 2019, then we would not recommend further reductions for that institution. So at that time, when we first installed it, we had 5 years to look at this before anyone could even reach that point. Now that we've gotten to this point, so what do we do once an institution has reached that 5%? So with the change that has been presented with the funding work group was within any consecutive 5-year period, an institution cannot lose more than 5%. So it'd be like a rolling baseline as we advance through each year, that they can't lose more than 5% from that 5-year period. So that there is still something to be lost or gained in that year, but we don't just stop at 5% from the 18-19 year and then no losses anymore in perpetuity. And this is the initial review of that amendment.
Are there any questions for Mr. Fuller?
Well, Jerry Cash, the 5%,
Yes, sir.
does that represent state funding? Does that
Yes, sir.
represent? Does that
Yes,
represent?
this is the
tuition?
distribution of the state funding for each of the schools.
So if their tuition's not affected by this 5%.
No, sir.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Fuller? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the productivity funding distribution policy changes?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Information agenda item number 6. Ms. Hazelwood will present the annual report on student retention and graduation. Ms. Hazelwood.
Yes, thank you. I have 2 information items for you today. The first one is on retention and graduation rates of our regular students. So national retention rates, NCES actually publishes national data for us. Their last report was May of 2021. For our first-time full-time degree-seeking students who enrolled at a 4-year degree granting institution in the fall of 2018, there was an overall retention rate of 81%. There's also an 81% retention rate when you just look at our public four as well. And our 2-year colleges, the national retention rate was 63% for the same cohort. Now to look at some Arkansas numbers, fall to fall retention rates by sector. Our retention rate calculations are based on fall to fall comparisons of students in the IPEDS cohort of first time entering, full-time, and credential seeking students from the fall term only. Retention rates for our 2-year colleges does follow the IPEDS model that includes any certificates awarded to the student during that retention year. As you can see, our 4-year universities did experience a slight decrease in retention rates, while our 2-year colleges did manage a slight increase in retention rates. When you look at gender, both the male and female cohorts for our 4-year institutions dropped, but our 2-year colleges, both male and female cohorts, experienced an increase. When you look at the retention rates for our students aged 25 to 54, I thought this was very interesting. The retention rates for our students in this age group increased almost 7% for our 4-year institutions. And our 2-year colleges did experience a slight increase as well.
Now, this is continuing full-time, first-time, full-time students.
Yes, Dr. Cash, these are our first time in college, full-time entering degree-seeking students.
So, and full-time is what, 12 or 15 hours?
Full-time for this purposes would be 12 hours.
So anyone less than the 12 hours is not included in this report?
That is correct. Yes, these are just those students that arrive at the institution their first semester and they enroll with a full-time course load. And they return the following fall semester, or for our 2-year colleges, they actually finished a certificate of proficiency or a technical certificate in that time period.
These would be students who we typically would call non-traditional, right? Older students.
In this age group, yes. So these actually waited a while to actually enter. but they did enter as, new students, and I guess delayed their education. So, but that is a huge increase for our four-year institutions of 7%. That's, as you can see, that we've actually had some declines over the last 5 years, and this is, the first look kind of at the COVID impact too. So it was interesting that our non-traditional students were able to increase, or I guess you can say stay enrolled, even with the pandemic.
In the state of Arkansas, do you know offhand what the numbers are for full-time versus part-time in the two-year colleges?
I don't off the top of my head, but we do have reports that can run that pretty easily. So I can certainly get that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. When you look at graduation rates at the national level, the same report that NCS publishes for retention, they also publish information on graduation rates. This is the 6-year or 150% graduation rates for first-time full-time undergraduate students who began at a 4-year degree granting institution in the fall of 2013. That graduation rate was 63%. The 6-year graduation rate was 62% for public institutions and 68% for 4-year private nonprofit institutions. The 6-year graduation rate was 66% for females and 60% for males at the national level. You can also get more information at that link provided. Now at the state level, here is graduation rates for both the 100%, which is they graduate in 4 years, or the 150% rate, they graduated in 6 years. And as you can see, for our 4-year institutions, we've been on a slow but steady increase for both the on-time rate and the 6-year rate. And here's a breakdown by gender. For the 150% rate for our 4-year institutions, we've seen a steady increase for both male and female cohorts. Here's a look for our 2-year colleges. Our associate seeking students who complete an associate degree in 3 years. The male students reported a 2.7% decrease in their 150% graduation rate, while the female students showed a slight increase. Were there any questions on the retention and graduation rate report? All right, this next.
Are there any questions for Ms. Hazelwood? Ms. Hazelwood, before we press on, I want to make one final call. We're approaching agenda item number 7. And Nicole has put in the chat the link to sign up to speak for agenda item number 10, the role and scope change for National Park. We are lining up those speakers. And to allot for time, we're going to make one final call for those who wish to speak. So please go and sign up if you would like to speak on that agenda item number 10. Thank you. Ms. Hazelwood, go ahead and let's present the annual report on retention and graduation of intercollegiate athletes.
Yes, sir. This is another information item, and I did want to mention before I go through, I just have a couple of slides on this one. The full report by institution for both the retention and graduation rates and the athlete report, you can find in the April board book. Just a quick overview of our athletic participation by academic year. As you can see that we had a bump in the number of students participating in athletics. We do have some 2-year colleges that are starting to add additional programs, which has caused that increase. Some of our 4-year institutions have seen some increase too, so it's kind of a universal effect there. But at participation by athletic scholarship, you'll see those numbers there. They are broken out by full, partial, and no scholarship. And the retention rates for our student athletes, went down from the fall 2020 to fall 21 cohort. This, of course, would be, I guess you could say, maybe an impact of the COVID pandemic, maybe, but really not a great decline, just a slight decline there. And for our graduates after 6 years for our athletes, we actually saw an increase. Our fall 15 cohort graduated at a rate of 50.4%.
In athletics, there's no requirement for number of hours per semester or per year. They can take 5 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours, whatever.
Well, that I could not speak to the NCAA rules. I'm sure that there's lots of rules that that guide them, through that part of it. So I do not know as far as scholarship requirements and number of hours. I'm not familiar with that at all.
Yeah, there's a minimum number you have to be involved in to participate in athletics. You can't
So-
come in and take a course and be involved in the football program in NCAA.
So the numbers here just represents students that are registered as athletic in athletics at each institution.
Yes, the institutions submit data to us, to the AHECB system that actually reports their student athletes and their scholarship status. And we are able to use AHECB to track their retention and graduation rates.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Hazelwood? Thank you so much, Ms. Hazelwood.
Thank you.
We'll go on to information agenda item number 8, and Dr. Eric Flowers will present the annual report on first-year student remediation for the fall.
I think he's muted, Al.
I believe he is as well. Nicole, can you see that?
Can you all hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes,
now
sir.
we
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll just start over. Each year, remediation rates are tracked for all first year entering undergraduate students in Arkansas to determine how many of our students are college ready. So this data is based on the criteria of not meeting a cutoff subscore of 19 on ACT or its equivalent on approved exams in mathematics, English composition, and reading. So our public 2- and 4-year institutions are required to adopt placement measurements supported by students' success data contained within institutional placement plans. Next slide, please. So in relation to statewide overview, approximately 21,264 first-time entering degree-seeking students were enrolled in Arkansas public institutions. 66% were enrolled in 4-year institutions compared to 34% at 2-year institutions. So out of the total first-time entering student population, 34% were placed into 1 or more remedial courses. Next slide. For this report, our rates are calculated with 3 subpopulations. So the first one being first-year rates, which are students who graduated within the past year, 2-year rates within the past 2 years, and anytime rates, which is an anytime past 2 years and can be referred to a non-traditional student. Next slide. So first we'll delve into the anytime rate. So out of the 1,666 students within this subgroup, 41% were enrolled in remediation at 2-year institutions and 32% were enrolled at 4-year institutions. Based on the anytime subgroup, this slide is broken down by subject area. So as you, the highest was the need for math at over 35%, and with the lowest being only needed remediation in reading with less than 5%. Next slide. In relation to anytime retention rates by gender and subject area, female students outnumber their male counterparts in all reported subject areas. And furthermore, of the 635 reported students enrolled in at least one remedial course, the highest were females at 23% enrolled in math only. Next slide. By ethnicity, whites had the lowest remediation at 37% at 2-year, whereas rates with students with different ethnicities varied from 41 to 100%. At the four-year institution, students who classified as white or Black had the lowest remediation rate, 30 to 35% respectively. Next slide. So now we're moving to one-year rates. So out of the 18,569 first-year entering students reported, 43% were enrolled in remedial courses at two-year institutions, and 29% were enrolled in remedial courses at four-year institutions. Next slide. As this graph details, most of the students were enrolled in one subject area. And then again, math seemed to be the highest total of remediation enrollments. Next slide. So female one-year remediation enrollment percentages were higher than males in the majority of areas reported, particularly in math only, where it was at 33%. Next slide. At our two-year institutions, white students had the lowest remediation rate of 38%, whereas Black students had the highest at 63%. So amongst our four-year institutions, 5 out of 6 ethnic groups had remediation rates lower than 40%. Next slide. Of the 1,029 total students reported, 43% were enrolled in remedial courses at two-year institutions, and 37% were enrolled in remediation courses at four-year institutions. Next slide. As with the prior two-year groups, anytime in one-year remediation, math only had a significant share of total number of remediation enrollments. Next slide. Again, female students had the highest remediation rates in enrollment in general. Next slide. Students who reported the lowest remediation percentages at two-year institutions were Asian students at 25%, whites at 38%, and Hispanic at 39%. At our four-year institutions, students who have the lowest remediation percentages reported were white students at 31% and Asian at 33%. Next slide, please. Okay, so in your agenda book, you will find the detailed numbers of each public two and four-year across the state. And this is the end of my remediation report.
Do all four-year institutions have remedial studies?
Yes, they do.
All of the state universities?
Yes, sir, they do.
Dr. Flowers, I've got a question about the one-year remediation rate chart.
Okay.
Showed 43% at two-year institutions. Is that 43% of the total?
For that population, yes.
So 43% of the students who enroll in two-year schools need some kind of remediation.
That is correct.
29% who enroll in the four-year institutions need some kind of, that's amazing. That even at four-year institutions, about 1/3 of the students need some help with some remediation. And I guess I'm wondering, do we? I'm sure we do. That's a question I don't even need to ask, but I'm gonna ask anyway. Do we pass this data along to the K through 12 people so they can see this?
Absolutely, they are aware of that based upon ACT scores in general.
That's just incredible that 1/3 of the students that finish high school here when they go to college need remediation. Am I the only one? Am I the only one that's astounded by that?
No.
No,
And
sir.
And we're only counting the first year degree seeking students. We're not counting people who just came in and take 1 or 2 or 3 courses without a degree intent. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're looking at enrolled students. Yes, not just someone who's just coming and taking one course.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So we have a number of students that aren't even included in the count.
This is correct.
It is jarring.
Yes, it is jarring. I work in the K-12 setting, and the state has a huge initiative, and you probably are familiar with it, the PLC, Professional Learning Communities Project, where they are working with Solution Tree and building cohorts to improve instruction across the state. And I know COVID did kind of set back that project because we had to do a lot by Zoom, and it's just not the same as in person. But the Professional Learning Communities Project and process allows schools to become better at collaborating teams working together. It's all about improving instruction for all kids, where all kids learn at high levels. And there are systems of intervention and support. So I'm hoping that in the future, as we get this process implemented with fidelity in the state, that we will see those improvements.
Just so disappointing to see this when you see the data in national publications that say we rank 26th in the world, America does, in mathematics, and almost at that point in reading. And I'm thinking, wow, we've got to somehow inspire our students to a higher level of achievement.
And the process focuses on essential learning and essential skills. You know, we have so many standards in our K-12 curriculum, and you all know this, it would take 23 years to master all of it. So it's focusing on what is essential for each grade so that they can be successful. And so I hope we can look at that maybe at the higher ed level as well. What is truly essential that our kids need to be successful, because we can't teach everything to mastery.
But now the number 41, 43% of remediation, that number hasn't changed in the last 10 years. It's been about that same number, or maybe higher, a little bit higher, but it's been in that same range for the last 10 years. And we haven't really been concerned up to this point, evidently.
My guess is if we weren't concerned, we probably didn't know it. You know,
Oh.
this is not good.
I appreciate all those comments. Are there any further questions for Dr. Flowers? Thank you all. Agenda item number 9, Dr. Flowers will present the annual report on productivity of recently approved programs.
Okay, thank you. So if you can recall, in January, we released the program viability report, which refers to the average number of graduates in a program. In the program productivity, we refer to the total sum of graduates in newly admitted programs that have yet to be included on the viability report. So recently approved programs require time to develop and produce graduates. So productivity for certificate and associate programs are measured 3 years after approval, while baccalaureate and graduate programs are measured 5 years after approval. Next slide, please. So for the new programs evaluated, they include 128 new certificate and associate degrees, 51 new bachelor, graduate, and professional degrees, and 50% of all those recently approved programs are on track to meet the standard as in total number of expected graduates each year. And so if we look at new programs with the most graduates by award type, at the certificate level, we have 368 graduates at Arkansas Tech University in health professions. At the associate level, 884 graduates at Southern Arkansas University Magnolia in University Studies. Back level, 378 graduates at the University of Fayetteville in Recreation and Sports Management. And at the graduate level, 523 graduates at the Arkansas State University Jonesboro campus in a Master of Science in Education, Special Education, K-12. Okay, so any questions?
Are there any questions for Dr. Flowers?
Dr. Flowers, I should know the answer to this, but what happens with all these programs that you see in the far right-hand column and in? How long do they get to exist?
So your questions, you said, repeat your question, please.
Yeah, I'm looking at page 9-3, okay?
9-3, 1 second.
And I'm seeing all these programs that far right-hand column that they did not meet their enrollment targets. And they're huge numbers of them, big numbers of them. They've told us they were expecting this number of students, and we missed it about 40% of the time. Do those programs at some point we say, hey, we need to discontinue these programs?
Yes, sir, the board does have the power to do that. That is correct.
or think that the universities would stop them before the board would have to stop them. Wouldn't that be the case?
Well, here's the thing about it. So if we're thinking about viability, for example, there may be a program that's listed as non-viable, but it's not actually costing the institution any additional funds. So for example, let's say if there's a program embedded into a program that is viable, or they do not have to use additional resources or faculty members, it may be a scenario as such. But on the flip side of that, it may be where you actually have faculty members, and it's costing the program and institution money, and it's non-viable.
That's pretty, I mean, you know, if you think about it in other ways, if you fail this many times, that's substantial, you know, overall 44%. I mean, that was, you know, I mean, that meant that whatever rationalization, whatever sort of work, pre-work was done was wrong about half the time.
Right.
You know. Thank you for telling us the information.
Absolutely.
Dr. Carr, I would add on to your comments and say that I know that this is something that our board's been looking at and questioning for a while. I love seeing the aggregated numbers there and having that information for us to review and to keep in mind. I know that Kevin Anderson, I know he's not here today, but I know he's spoken about the need for some of this information at the last two board meetings, I believe. And so we appreciate this information being presented. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Dr. Flowers? Thank you, Dr. Flowers.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. We will move on to agenda item number 10. Dr. Flowers will present the role and scope change for National Park College. And Dr. Flowers.
Okay, thank you. National Park College proposes a change in its role and scope to include baccalaureate level degrees to meet local workforce demand. This change will allow them to offer a Bachelor of Nursing degree. National Park has stated that they do not seek to become a regional university, as this offering will answer the economic needs and workforce demands of the city of Hot Springs, Garland County, and the surrounding region. The institution currently offers an Associate of Science in Nursing, RN, and a technical certificate in practical nursing, an LPN. National Park employs 19 full-time nursing faculty, with 13 having the credentials to teach at the baccalaureate level. And I will open the floor to Dr. Durden to address any questions about the role and scope change request.
Thank you. Good morning. I would like to just begin by saying thank you for taking the time to consider National Park College's proposal for role and scope change. I have a few opening remarks, if that would be okay with the board.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Well, let me begin by clearly stating that National Park College has no desire to change its role from that of a community college. We do not seek to be a regional university. The formal process set forth by the state requires us to submit a role and scope change proposal. We have complied, but we are requesting only that our scope be expanded so that we may offer a baccalaureate level program of study, which will be presented at the next coordinating board meeting should this proposal today be approved. A priority of NPC's current strategic plan is to strengthen educational and workforce partnerships. We want to provide relevant career opportunities for our students in support of our community partners. Hot Springs is a healthcare hub for much of the southern and particularly southwestern portions of the state. Healthcare is the largest single industry sector in Garland County and in our region. Our hospital partners, from whom you will hear today, have expressed a need for BSN prepared nurses. Our job as a community college that has a publicly elected board of trustees and receives public financial support from the local community is to answer that call. Furthermore, in poll after poll of our students in the last 5 years, we have been asked to provide opportunities for achieving bachelor's degree level or bachelor's degrees here in Garland County. That is a request that we have taken seriously. We have sought opportunities to do that, including offering 90 2+2 transfer degrees with regional universities and one private within the state. Many of those allow students to complete their junior and senior level courses online, and a few of them are actually delivered on our campus. As you will find in our role and scope proposal, there is ample workforce need for BSN prepared nurses who have far more financial and managerial opportunities than ASN prepared nurses. While only one university offers a BSN within the 50-mile radius of National Park College, if you stretch out into the Little Rock area, you will find that the current BSN programs cannot meet the labor demand. If today's scope change is approved and we move on to the degree proposal in the next meeting, I'll be happy to elaborate on those needs. I anticipate that the degree proposal, which I've already submitted to the department, will answer a lot of your questions about the degree's viability. That said, I want you to know that our proposed plan for the BSN will not require us to add any facilities, nor will it require us to ask for any additional funding requests. We can operate the BSN within our current budget. We may require an additional faculty member, but as you will hear later from Dr. Hogan, we are about to kick off a major gifts campaign, and offering a BSN program on our campus is of significant philanthropic interest in our feasibility study. I expect that there is no way for us to avoid talking in detail about the BSN option today, and I'll be happy to answer questions that you have about our plan for that degree as they arise. Yeah, I remind you and those who are here to comment today that the real issue at hand is whether the board finds that NPC has the capacity to offer a baccalaureate level program of study. I would assure you in this case, in the case of nursing, that we do. As Dr. Flowers mentioned, we have 13 master's or higher prepared nursing faculty. Likewise, I'm certain that there will be concerns about unfilled student slots in programs of study and nursing programs of study statewide. I cannot really speak to the vacancies that other schools have. What I can tell you is that our students have expressed the desire to have the option to complete a BSN here at NPC. I would advise those programs with vacancies to consider where our ASN graduates pursue their BSN degrees. In preparation for this degree proposal, we polled our recent graduates over the last 5 years who have achieved a BSN. 32.5% of those transferred to a nearby regional university, which is our nearest transfer partner with whom we hope to maintain a close relationship. 38.9% of those students attended other Arkansas public institutions of higher education, primarily here in Central Arkansas region. However, and this is truly the population of students that we hope to capture because they're place-bound, 28.6% of our graduates attended an online, out-of-state, or private for-profit university. So in answer to those questions about programs or vacancies, I would argue that NPC's proposal is not a threat. The export of Arkansas talent is. I hope these comments suffice as an opening statement. I thank the board members for their consideration. I humbly request an affirmative vote so that NPC may continue to fulfill its community college mission in service of Hot Springs, Garland County, and the broader region of southwestern Arkansas. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will call on those who have signed up to comment on this proposal. I do have a list that's been presented to me. As you are called, please remember to identify yourself, your name, the institution you're representing, etc. And we are going to, since we do have a number of people signed up to speak, we're going to ask that you hold your comments to 2 minutes as we go through this list. And Nicole, if we start to go long, could you help remind us of the time?
Yes, sir.
And then at the end of those 15 or 16 speakers, we will give National Park a moment at the end to make any additional comments. We will start with Scott Smith from National Park Medical Center.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, board, for hearing us here today. In National Park Medical Center, I'm Scott Smith. I'm the market CEO for Saline Memorial Hospital in Benton, Arkansas, as well as here in Hot Springs with National Park. I've heard earlier today some comments about nurses and nursing. We all know there's a nursing shortage, has been one a long time, but we've just finished World War III with the COVID situation, which has made it worse, and it's called travel nursing. The speaker before me talked about exporting Arkansans. Well, the Arkansas nurses have been exported to other states, and there's a good chance that if you come to any of our facilities, you will be taken care of by someone from California, Alabama, Louisiana, and/or Michigan. That's not what we want. Some of those figures for National Park alone, in 2020, I spent $1.5 million on travel nurses. In 2021, I spent $6 million. So far this year, I've spent $1.25 million just at National Park Medical Center. This is not sustainable. There is no nursing funnel within our service area to obtain nurses. Today, I have 25 people at National Park alone that could enter this 4-year program. I know who they are. We've hand selected them. We need those people. We've got to grow our own and show some other way to get nurses into our system. We all deserve the best healthcare. We've got the best healthcare system in the world, but you have to have the nurses to take care of them. You look at why hospitals are shutting down across the country, they don't have nurses. That's just the facts. So I'd rather take that $8 million that I've spent and put it into a program like this. Don't worry about the clinical rotations, because between these two state-of-the-art facilities that we've got here, and you'll hear from the other CEO next, we can take all of the clinical rotations. I've got 3 hospitals in Arkansas myself. So rotating nurses through is not really a concern for me, but we've got to get a program and get them into the pipeline.
On your 2 minutes, I'd ask you to please complete your comments.
Okay, I want to again thank the board and ask that you really consider giving us this avenue for this 4-year program here at National Park College. I thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. I believe if any board members have any questions for Mr. Smith, they could ask them now.
Mr. Smith, Grayson Bicker, I was just curious if you have any partnerships ongoing with any other higher ed institutions in the area currently.
I'd love them I've been here for 2 years, and we're establishing partnerships anywhere and everywhere we can. All of my counterparts are too. So yes, we've got connections all over the state, but we need more. We need to get into all of the medical schools and do all we can. But there's a line lining up for partnerships for this very subject.
Mr. Smith, this is Al Brodell. I share your pains with the shortage of nurses. I've worked in healthcare since I was 18. You say you have people identified to go and start this program. Am I wrong in saying that this program does not create any net new RNs?
Yes. This program I need 51 RNs right now today, just at National Park. The 25 identified people are in our hospitals, they're in our clinics. They want to become nurses. They want to become RNs. So this would enable us to add more of that. If there's a class of 25, let's just say, allowed to start at National Park, I could take all of those nurses today once they graduate. So It's not a factor of, as far as, you know, can we take these people into employment? We have the open positions today.
I'm gonna rephrase my question. These are, I believe this is a proposal for RN to BSN. So everyone who goes into
That's
this
correct.
program is already an RN, is that correct?
That's right.
And so as it moves from RN to BSN, I would ask, do you have a need for those people at the BSN level? And with that creating no new RN degrees, do you have that need?
We do.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I have one. Would he explain that to me? Because I don't understand that. What the need is there, what for the difference?
Well,
Because when you were talking about what your needs were, you continually talk about RNs.
I consider, yeah, we need 4-year RNs. It's a higher degree.
Okay.
It's a higher level of delivery, and that's what is needed in healthcare. But I will say this on record. There are LPNs that are needed today also. There is such a nursing shortage. So we need it all, and we can put them all to work. So it baffles me that we talk about a shortage. We all acknowledge we probably all have been affected by this nursing shortage. There at the board, along with everybody in this room, but we've got to create opportunities and funnels to keep nurses around. We've got to be able to deliver healthcare in this country. And this is just a means to do it here that we need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Up next, I'll call on Houston Davis from the University of Central Arkansas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity, and I will be brief. I'm not going to necessarily speak to specifically to the nursing need. I think that is there. Your business, but I think positioning Henderson State and National Park to partner on that might be a good way to go. My comments here today are more about the challenges that you as a board are going to have as you look to this next decade, probably the most important decade that this board will have in its existence in shaping the future of higher education in the state of Arkansas. I was with Tennessee Board of Regents, did accreditation program review for them, was the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs for the Oklahoma State Regents for higher education, and in the same role in the Georgia system. Those systems have role and scope policies, or function policy, they call it in Georgia. They've got the funding formulas available to them to be able to shape, and then varying levels of being able to remove, establish, adapt academic programs. And the Georgia board actually has the authority to consolidate institutions. You're not there, that is not available to most. Those mechanisms are critically important to mission creep. Those mechanisms are critically important to unnecessary duplication of effort. There was a great deal of conversation in this meeting earlier about the role and function of institutions and how best can you be good stewards of the public dollars and increasingly scarce public dollars of the state of Arkansas, positioning your units, 32, 33 standalone fully credited units, to be able to meet those needs. A lot of what I heard in coming to Arkansas in January of 17 was that this state has too many universities and too many colleges. And that's a debate that happens around the country. As I said, Georgia was dealing with consolidations for that. One thing that I think you have to hold tight to as you're making policy decisions is how important your role and scope policies are to positioning your system of colleges and universities to be able to meet needs in the next decade, when we know that overall enrollments are going to decrease by another 10%. The financial challenges faced by your institutions right now are only going to get worse in the next 5 years.
Dr. Davis.
We appreciate
I'm
your
sorry we
willingness to
reached
play
our
a
time. I'd
leadership.
ask you to complete your comments.
I just think you've got to hold tight to those mechanisms, and we have to watch out for unnecessary duplication of effort. Partnering universities together, partnering colleges and universities together is the way to go.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for Dr. Davis? Thank you. I will now call on Dr. Doug Ross from CHI St. Vincent Hot Springs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, my name is Doug Ross. I serve as the president and CEO of CHI St. Vincent here in Hot Springs. We're the largest healthcare provider in Southwest Arkansas, 300-bed hospital. We have 25 clinics throughout the southwest part of the state. I'm an emergency medicine physician by training. I practiced in the emergency department for 10 years before I switched into administration. I can echo all of the financial concerns that Scott mentioned. We are experiencing the same thing. 30%, a recent article came out, 30% of the hospitals in the state of Arkansas are at risk of foreclosure, 30%. And the primary cause of that is the cost with travel nursing and the inability to bring on nurses. So the two institutions here have not done that and will never close our doors. But we need something to change. Not only is it a numbers game, I want to answer the need for the BSNs. What excites me is improving quality, improving safety, better patient experience, doing those things at a lower cost. How do we do that? And we've decided to do that by launching on a magnet journey. Magnet is the highest honor in nursing excellence by the American Nurses Association. Magnet hospitals achieve better outcomes. And one of the ways they achieve better outcomes is that we follow strict evidence-based guidelines and we bring on higher trained individuals. There are only 4 magnet hospitals in the state of Arkansas. We're proud to be one of those. We bring on BSNs at a very strict higher threshold because we believe those BSNs provide higher standards of care. They're involved in education. They're involved in our quality work, our performance improvement work. We're always going to have needs for RNs, but BSNs elevate our standards of care, and that benefits not only this community, but all of Southwest Arkansas. The problem is that the concern earlier was about the unfilled BSN seats in other four-year schools across the state of Arkansas. Over the past 3 years, we have brought in, since I've been president, we have brought in 150 new nurses, fresh from training. Only 3 of those were BSN candidates trained at a facility outside of Southwest Arkansas. Southwest Arkansas
Dr. Ross,
nurses.
I apologize. We've reached our time limit. I'd ask you to complete your remarks, sir.
Sure. Southwest Arkansas nurses want to train here and they want to stay in this region of the state to provide their healthcare services. And that's what we're looking to provide. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Dr. Ross?
Dr. Ross, I just have essentially the same question for you. Can you please speak to the current partnerships you have with other institutions of higher ed in the region?
Sure. Well, and can you help me define what a partnership, what you mean by partnership?
Who you're pulling BSN candidates from now? Are you working with any of the institutions closely to make sure that those positions that are filled that you need?
We are working with Henderson State. We're working obviously with National Park on the greatest scale. And we've also offered some assistance with Ouachita Baptist and their program. To Scott's point, we have the clinical slots. This is our number one threat to our strategic plans is the ability to bring on highly trained nurses. So we're going to offer assistance and partnerships with anybody that can bring in the staff that will help us fulfill our strategic plan and our ministry.
Al, I would like to ask a question of you. Can I do that?
Absolutely.
No, this is for Al Brodell. And that is this, you've been in healthcare all your life. what can a BSN do that an RN can't do? Is it
So-
primarily a leadership thing? When I go to a hospital, I don't ask if are you a BSN trained nurse? I want to know, are you an RN?
Yeah, it's really a scope of training. It's looking at really transforming the way we do healthcare. RNs and BSNs can absolutely start IVs and give medicines, those types of things, but we're really kind of challenging our care mechanisms to provide higher standards of care, to provide quality, to lower cost, to make sure that healthcare is sustainable in the future. And that really requires transformative thinking that comes from that additional training. I would say the same thing. If you come to the emergency department and you're seen by a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant, they can do probably 80% of the things that an ER doctor can, but 20% or more of those things, you need a higher trained individual to help care for certain illnesses. So it's really the same shift. We're needing a higher level trained nurse to really continue our strategies going forward.
Yeah. Al, I wanted you to address that too. Al Brodell, you've been in healthcare.
I have been, yes. I don't mind weighing in on that as well. In my system, the BSN is needed for certain advancements. Where we see it primarily is in managerial opportunities. There are some specialty opportunities for advancement, but I would agree with Dr. Ross that by and large, RN and BSN, when it comes to the bedside nurse, the ability to pass meds, start IVs, they both have those capabilities, and that BSN is not a requirement on most of our floors for most of those positions. We would take every RN we could get.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's not a requirement. However, the standard of care is higher with a BSN trained nurse. So when you're looking for a patient that potentially has a very subtle change in condition or you need rapid intervention, BSN trained nurses have a broader scope to be able to elevate our quality.
Thank you, Doctor.
All that money that you and your colleague there in the room are spending on travel nurses, are those BSNs or RNs?
They're both.
Now, I thought you said a while ago you had you say 150 you'd hired, is that right?
No, that's new nurses out of training. Those aren't travel nurses.
And three of them are BSNs?
Three of those were from BSN programs outside of Southwest Arkansas.
147 of them were RNs in?
No, that's so about 20% to 20 to 25% of our class is BSNs. The majority of those BSNs come from programs in Southern and Southwest Arkansas.
Gotcha. Okay, I understand now. I got it.
Yeah. So if we're if the expectation is for us to pull BSNs from Central Arkansas, from Fayetteville, those types of areas, that's just not happening because hospitals in those regions are gobbling up those nurses before they ever have a chance to come to Southwest Arkansas.
Good.
We need to train our own.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. I will move on to Ann Bain from UA Little Rock.
Oh, hold on, give me 1 second. I'll show my face here. Thank you. I'm Ann Bain. I'm the provost at UA Little Rock, but my academic discipline is nursing. So I have had 22 years as a ACEN accreditation team leader, as well as 12 years serving on the board of commissioners for ACEN. And ACEN is the discipline-specific accrediting body for nursing. So I wanted to share with the board some of the comments that were made at a meeting that we had in the fall that brought together some of the nursing leaders across the state, including representation from National Park and some of the leaders within colleges and universities. So it is correct. This program is an RN to BSN program. Nursing tries to think of ourselves as special, but whether you graduate from an associate degree program or a traditional 4-year baccalaureate program, everyone takes the same NCLEX licensure exam. There's no differentiation on degree. An RN to BSN program is designed for those associate degree RNs who would like to get additional credential. It is that we have 6 established accredited RN to BSN programs in the state. And the comment that was made at the meeting was there's available seats. It was made in the context of collaboration and partnership and maximizing the resources that we have available in our state to meet our needs. The modality preference for RNs who are out in practice, and this is seen nationally as well as in our state, is an online format because we don't want to draw them away from their employer. We want them to be able to complete their advanced degree without leaving that bedside, without further compromising their employment. So online, synchronous, and asynchronous has been a solid model. If we here on our campus had established a face-to-face RN to BSN program, it would not survive because we're trying to make it easier for our folks to be able across the state to be able to go back to school. So again, the messaging from that meeting I felt very good about was that we as nursing educators and as colleges and university administrators need to collaborate together to use the resources that we currently have and facilitate advanced education across the state and a collaborative model that would maximize resources. So
Ms. Bain, sorry,
yes.
we've reached our time. I have to ask you to complete your comment.
That's probably the conclusion of my comments.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Bain?
Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to Gary Troutman, President and CEO of Greater Hot Springs Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Board. Appreciate the time this morning to address you. As a strong proponent of workforce development and workforce education, we must meet the needs of our local community hospitals and other employers in the expansion of the current Associate of Science and Nursing program to the BSN program as a critical element for accomplishing this task. As a workforce development tool, the expansion of the program provides a means for highly educated and highly skilled nurses to remain in the local community rather than having to travel the 40+ miles away as they work, raise their families, and contribute to the local economy, and also further reduce the risk of them having to move away. This is not a unique request, as we have seen numerous states pursue this process of education for the reasons stated above, as well as to address the shortage of RNs that has been an issue for the last several decades. So precedent has already been set. As a local business entity promoting workforce and workforce education in Hot Springs in our region, we've been continually impressed with Dr. Hogan, Dr. Wade, Dr. John Hogan, Dr. Wade Durden, and their team here at National Park College. We're confident that National Park College is fully equipped, committed, and capable of absorbing the resulting added population of students this program would bring. In our visits with them, they have demonstrated their ability to do so in the form of faculty, staff, classrooms, technology, library resources, and more, and have been true committed partners to address the workforce issue in our community. They currently employ 13 mastered prepared nurses. I would like to say I'm a graduate of University of Central Arkansas. I have utmost respect for Dr. Davis, but I have been the classified advertising director at the Democrat Gazette in Little Rock several years, a few years back. I've worked with all the local hospitals in Little Rock, Hot Springs, the Metro Little Rock area, and across the state. You know, there are occupations that come and go that are the hot occupation at the time. We talk now about the dearth of truck drivers that we see across the country. But one thing has been—
Mr. Troutman, I'm sorry, we've reached our time. I'd ask you to complete your comments.
And I am. The nursing has been true throughout. So while other occupations and the need for them may decline, there will always be a need for nursing. And some nurses just want to go and achieve that extra mark, the bachelor's degree that this would entail if you grant it. So we would humbly ask that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Troutman? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I would now call on Lawrence Alexander from the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, good morning. I'm Lawrence Alexander, Chancellor, the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. And I'd like to voice my opposition to the proposal to change the role and scope of National Park College to offer the Bachelor of Science degree in nursing. In addition to the reasons given in opposition, the proposal raises some very deep and far-reaching implications for higher education funding than what is presented in the role and scope change request. As others have stated, the scope change would lead immediately to the unnecessary duplication of RN to BSN nursing programs at NPC and possibly statewide. But it does not stop there. The proposed resolution calls for the approval of the NPC role and scope change to, quote, include baccalaureate level degrees to meet local workforce demand, end quote. If approved, the resolution carries the very real potential for increasing the number of four-year programs at two-year colleges in our state. I agree wholeheartedly that we need more nurses in our state, but I believe we have the capacity across the state and online to adequately address the state's need for RN to BSN degrees without changing the scope of NPC. In addition, I believe the proposed scope change at NPC could lead to rising state costs, both seen and unseen, both intended and unintended. Moreover, the scope change would invite more applications for scope changes to allow college-sponsored baccalaureate degree programs at two-year colleges statewide, bringing additional pressures to the state general revenue fund, which is already stretched in its efforts to support all of higher education. Our state needs to strongly support its fine, robust, discrete two-year colleges like NPC, as well as its great collection of our four-year universities to continue to advance the health and economic development of our state and serve our local communities. Therefore, I'd like to add my voice in opposition to the proposed role and scope change because of my personal concern of the potentially significant detrimental impact it could have on higher education funding in our state. Thank
Mr.
you.
Alexander, I'm sorry we've reached our time. Could you please complete your comment?
And I've reached the end of my comment, so thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Alexander?
Dr. Alexander, my friend, I see where you have a program, a RN to BSN program. You have a capacity of 15 and you've got 4 students in it. What's the problem?
I don't know specifically what the problem is there, but I do know that we face some challenges, especially with the pandemic. That's one factor that has really come in to hurt in the particularly in the nursing area. But we've got our folks working hard to attract more students to the RN to BSN program. And we have focused in the last few years more specifically on our generic BSN program. But we have started to gear up more on that RN to BSN program. But it demonstrates very clearly that we have spots. We have spots open, and we welcome students from NPC and all of our two-year colleges to come in and finish the RN to BSN program here at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff.
I just wondered, I guess that was, my question was, are you just not seeing a demand for it? Is there just no demand for it?
Well, I think we're just not getting that high demand right now.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, sir. I will now call on Mayor Pat McCabe, Mayor of Hot Springs and CEO of Levi Hospital.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you today. As probably the most senior healthcare executive in Arkansas, at least at one location, 35 years. I go back to the early 80s, and those comments that are being made against this proposal reminds me of when the certificate of need process was in full gear, and hospitals were trying to protect themselves from other CAT scans being introduced and other higher forms of diagnostic services being performed at other hospitals. And over time, that program went by the wayside because they were restricting healthcare. And that's what I'm hearing here today, is a restriction of healthcare. Earlier in the session today, we heard that the role of the community college is to serve the community and not to branch out outside your geographic area. One of the things that National Park College has done, and true today as they have been for the last 20, 30, 40 years, is they have continued to serve this community. And I thought it was very novel of them to reach out and begin the discussions of offering a bachelor level program in concert with their LPN, continuing to offer the associate degree program, and then going off into the bachelor's degree program, trying to fit the needs of our community and also fitting the needs of the student body. So I'm very disappointed with those who are promoting an anti-growth position here. We as a community, both as a hospital executive and as the mayor, we're trying to serve our own. And that is not being met by other educational institutions outside of our local community. So I'm very much endorsing this project. The Hospital of Levi needs this program, needs the flexibility that this program provides, not only for the healthcare providers within our community, but also for the student body who's looking for a career in healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions for the mayor?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I will now call on Dr. Chuck Welch from the ASU system.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to address the board very briefly. And let me be clear, I'm also not going to speak to the need for nurses. That's not my area of expertise. But I did want to speak just very quickly about a concern I have about a non-strategic approach that we are taking in our state. So I'm now in my 18th year as a college and university president. I've been a president at a community college and certainly understand the important role that our community colleges play. I've been a president at an independent institution and now a system that has both 4-year and 2-year institutions. My greatest concern is the rapid change that we're seeing in our industry across the country and the real challenges our institutions are going to face over the next decade. I'm also concerned about all of our institutions in the way that we are perhaps getting outside of what our original mission was. And that includes 4-year institutions. I know there will be those that say 4-year institutions shouldn't be actively participating in degrees that are below the baccalaureate degree. And I agree that that's a concern that needs to be addressed. That's why during the most recent legislative session, when there was legislation aimed at allowing baccalaureate degrees at 4-year institutions that bill failed, I actually proposed to the legislator a resolution to come to some understanding on this issue. And I just want to read the title of the resolution. And it was to encourage collaboration among the Division of Higher Education, the Higher Education Coordinating Board, and state-supported 2-year and 4-year institutions of higher education to study the need for new policies and review current policies related to expanding access to applied baccalaureate and workforce degrees in high-demand career fields throughout the state. We need this conversation, but it needs to be one that's had collectively, collaboratively, and with a significant amount of study. After the session, I actually followed up with the Arkansas Community College Association and discussed getting this work underway. And they definitely wanted to do that. And it was only a few days later that the national park proposal came forth. So I would encourage all to really think about the long-term repercussions, the need for all of us to have a serious conversation about the role and scope of 2-year and 4-year institutions, and try to come to some collaborative understanding about what's best for efficiency, what's best for educating our students, what's best for avoiding duplication, and what's best for moving the entire state of Arkansas forward so that we can have growth, we can have development, and we can have sustainable institutions.
Dr. Welch, I'm sorry, we've reached your time.
I'm finished,
I'd
Mr.
ask you
Chairman.
to finalize your comments.
I am finished. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Welch? Thank you. I apologize for my pronunciation of this last name. I now call on Dr. Stephanie Nehus, Superintendent of Hot Springs School District.
Mr. Chair, could we move to the next on the list? Dr. Nehus had another commitment. The meeting ran unexpectedly long, so she has not been able to stay with us. So if we could just move to the next person on the list.
Thank you very much. I would call Forrest Spiker, National Park College Board of Trustees.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. My name is Forrest Spicer. I apologize. I'm calling in. We're traveling today. I'm a bank president in Hot Springs and a former chair of the largest hospital, both in employees and beds at Hot Springs. Former chairman of that board and also chairman of the Economic Development Organization there in Hot Springs that Gary Troutman is president of. Currently president or chairman of the Board of Trustees at National Park College and an alumnus. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of National Park College, I fully support the efforts to provide citizens of Garland County with access to education. Today's request will fulfill a long-awaited need of producing BSN credentialed nurses locally who wish to remain in our area afterwards and work and serve patients in our area. We have had an experience of brain drain in our area for years, where many of our bright and talented young people have migrated to other parts of the country. And we have also had a increase in a rising level of healthcare needs with respect to the fact that we are in some ways a retirement community. Offering an on-premise BSN is a part of the solution to this situation. And I appreciate your consideration of this measure, and we hope that you will definitely vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Thank you. I'll now call on Representative Bruce Cozart from the House of Representatives.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board. I'm glad to be here today to be able to speak for my local college on this. I am not a health department or anything to do with the health business, but I am a legislator, and I'm actually the chair of the House Education Committee. My friend Dr. Welch spoke a while ago about this coming before us at the committee, and I do remember that. And they were asked to come and go before the right process to do this. And I believe that's what National Park is doing today. You know, I look at this as the opportunity for people that are a LPN or an RN to be able to move up and do those things. As a educator in a school system, you come out of college and you teach for a while, then you start working on your master's degree and then your doctorate degree. So this is kind of the same thing, but most of our hospitals need leadership, and leadership is what this means. BSN is a leadership type role that the RNs can do. So I'm here to speak in favor. They've had a great nursing program here, and I believe this will be a great extension for them. And I hope you guys will be positive in looking at this and helping us out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the representative? I would now call on Representative Les Warren from the House of Representatives.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. I appreciate the time this morning. I've been very fortunate to serve on the foundation board here at National Park College for majority of my 27 years here in Hot Springs. I could not be prouder of this college, its successes and accomplishments. Just over the past decade, what I've been able to see, especially with respect to our nursing program. We really consider it a shining star here. When I'm not being a legislator, I'm running a title company, Hot Springs Title Company here. It hasn't been that long ago that we only had 4 title companies here. Now we have 8, with more talking about coming here. That's because Hot Springs has had a tremendous amount of growth and we have more people coming. That doesn't even include the visitors that we have coming to this community. We've got a lot of growth that has occurred here. So the healthcare need has also increased. There's definite economic need, and we have an excellent solution here. We are not meeting the need, and we have the demand. I would just ask for a favorable outcome on our request today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions for the senator? I would now call on Representative Richard McGrew from the House of Representatives.
Thank you for allowing me to come forward and to share information about this. I just also want to throw my support behind this as a legislator. I'm born and raised in this community and have seen this college grow, and the work that it's done and served in the community has been tremendous. I also, in my previous life, was an electrical contractor and did work here to complete the science building and the nurses facility. They have state-of-the-art facilities already here in place for this education. They have a nursing program. There's a tremendous need in the community for it. The hospitals are paying a tremendous bill on the traveling nurses to be here. It seems to me this is a great solution to the problem, and I would just throw my support behind it, encourage it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the representative? I would call on Senator Bill Sample. Senator?
Thank you. And I thank the board for allowing us to take and come speak. I think it's one of my duties as a legislator is to provide a highly educated workforce, and especially in the nursing area that we have. We are the catchment area for all of Southwest Arkansas, and as served on the ARP committee this year, had firsthand experience with the needs of our hospitals and the traveling nurse programs, and we spent many $1 million. And so if there's any way that we can educate our workforce and educate more nurses to take and fulfill these needs, I'm all for it. So I would appreciate y'all considering this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for the senator? I would now offer time for National Park to come up and make any summary comments, and for our board to ask any follow-up questions of National Park.
Good morning. It's still just almost not quite afternoon. So before I get started, I'm John Hogan. I'm president at National Park College, and I'm grateful for all of you Thank you to the coordinating board for your patience and time and your attention to this. I know community and state service and policy service is hard work, and I'm grateful for your questions and your stewardship. I'm also thankful to my higher ed colleagues, those who've supported and those who haven't. I think the constructive nature of those communications are always welcome. It helps us to get better as a system, and that's part of why we have these conversations and meetings. So grateful for them. And also, of course, the family here at NPC, which extends into our community, the legislators and hospital administrators and community leaders and trustees that are here today. We also have a number of our faculty and staff, community members, some nursing students, some others who are very curious about the outcome of just our innovative approach to how we can meet a local workforce need. When I was talking to the mayor, he said, what we're really looking to do is grow our own. And that means our local mission. It speaks to how community colleges, I think, have to adapt. It speaks to Arkansas Department of Higher Education's goals, which, as you know, are credentials, credential production, affordability, equity, and workforce. And I think this is primarily about workforce. I have had the opportunity to meet with several of the folks that spoke today. Dr. Welch was generous in hosting a meeting, and several university folks came to that meeting. I also read every letter of concern, as you've had, and I really appreciate that conversation. I think it informed us, and also there were some folks convinced, and then there were some who weren't. But we've made the decision to move forward on the position of NPC's change in scope. A lot of today's conversation has been about the degree itself. Dr. Durden and also the chair reminded us that it might be a semantic issue. And Dr. Davis referred to our request to change role and scope. That is a necessity of the state of Arkansas's policy, that we would have preferred to change our scope. We want to be a community college now and forevermore. So we're in agreement that there's no need or provision to change our role. So NPC's goals in making this request, there are 4 basic goals. I made some of those noises, but not all of them. So 4 basic goals. Some of these will answer the questions that were made. First of all, our goal is to increase the number of individuals, prospective students and students who pursue the nursing profession. So there were questions about whether we would grow the number of RNs. That's exactly our objective. So having a BSN completion program makes our RN program more attractive. It enables us to make our program more attractive to local students and retain them here in Garland County. So there will be, and our plan is to expand the number of RNs in addition to trying to meet the need for BSNs. So there's the workforce aspect of this, which we talked a lot about today. There's also the marketplace aspect of it. How do we attract students to the profession of nursing? That's really what we're attempting to do. Secondly, I'm going to reassure you that we want to remain a community college. Our language was intentional, as I mentioned. We want to be a preeminent community college. We do not wish to be a university. There are several fine universities in Arkansas. I agree with Dr. Davis that changes are needed. We probably don't agree on what those changes might be, but essentially, community colleges are operating on a paradigm that's 50 years old. And our workforce is not operating on a dated operating system. Healthcare, third goal is meet our access and completion goals, but more importantly, as Dr. Ross said, this is a quality of life issue. It's a patient care issue. It's a community health issue. It's an emergency in that respect. So our goal is to improve the quality of patient care, make it more affordable. And I think the hospital leaders made a significant point that the solution that we have in place today, the methodology that we're using today to staff our hospitals with nurses needs work, needs some innovation, it needs some change. Our fourth goal is directly aligned with the ADHE, and that is to increase the number of credentials of our Kansans. We are the largest county in Arkansas without a university presence, save the 3 SAU degrees that Dr. Durden mentioned that are now delivered on our campus in partnership. Our community has gaps, and our partnership strategy will remain, but our goal to improve our workforce, BSN is a missing piece of that workforce goal, and our bachelor's attainment still lags behind the rest of Arkansas. I think I've heard all the objections to the proposal, and I think I owe it to the folks who have stayed here to try to address those objections, and I'm going to attempt to do that. The first concern I heard, and if there are others, or if you want to interrupt with questions or so forth, I think I can probably at least attempt to handle that. Our first concern is that there's now unused capacity. The first concern expressed is unused capacity in current BSN programs. And again, I expect our nursing program to help to remedy this because we're planning to increase the size of our ASN program. We'll serve 25 in the completion program. So there will be more students for other Arkansas universities to serve. Right now, Dr. Durden mentioned the percentage of our students who are going out of state, mostly to proprietary schools. We believe, and we're very certain, in fact, that this group will stay inside Arkansas. So our program is aimed entrepreneurially at promoting more producing more ASNs, and the BSN option accommodates that. So I assert that this will help those completion gaps or those enrollment gaps for other Arkansas completion programs with whom we do enjoy excellent partnerships. Second concern I've heard is about the mission. Is it in our mission? And I think that there's just going to be a difference of opinion about what a community college's mission should be. This issue has been alive in other states, 24 others in the US. Community colleges offer workforce baccalaureate degrees. Many of those offer nursing degrees. Those states are almost all high degree attainment states to which Arkansas aspires. And the baseline data from those reports is that the community college baccalaureate, workforce baccalaureate has not taken away from university enrollment, and in fact has helped to promote it. So this is the future of higher education. It's here in some states. It's been accelerated by the pandemic. So we can make a credible argument that it's at least true in 24 other states, that this is squarely in the mission, in the workforce mission of community colleges. The third concern that I've heard is faculty and financial capacity, including some catastrophic chaining. This was going to cost Arkansas a lot of money. I don't think we can afford not to do it, actually. You've heard that we have 13 MSN faculty. You've heard that we have the clinical and lab infrastructure in place to teach the completion year. You have heard that we will produce additional BSNs, which hopefully will matriculate to earn their MSN, which hopefully will staff all of our nursing programs going forward. So our goal in addressing that concern about faculty and financial capacity, there's no other state money that we're requesting. We'll be able to manage that with tuition and fees. And the goal is to augment enrollment in completion programs and not take from them. Concern 4 was, have you tried partnerships? Boy, have we tried partnerships. Our strategy, in fact, and it's aligned with the SAU degrees, is to continue to pursue relationships with universities on providing on-premise bachelor's degrees. So Save Nursing, we're continuing to do that. We're continuing to be active in our conversations with many of your campuses. I have the numbers here. We have not visited with all 11 universities and said, will you partner with us on an on-premise BSN program? I think you heard that there was some unwillingness to do that other than online, and some advantages to how that would happen online. For about the last 7 years, we have worked with many different Arkansas universities. I'm going to just look at my notes because I can't really see them even though I have my glasses on. We have met with 6 of 11 of the Arkansas universities to discuss bachelor's degrees. We did have an agreement for a BSN completion program to be on premise with one of those degrees, with one of those universities. That did not pan out. The other meetings have ranged from conversations about what we needed to have offered on our campus, and to more specific conversations and more advanced conversations. There haven't been any takers to provide an on-premise BSN. So I don't know if the partnership standard is that we should meet with all 11 universities and go through that process while Mr. Smith and Dr. Ross and Mayor McCabe patiently wait for us to produce more nurses, or if 6 is enough. But if I need to do more, I will. I think we need to be working to solve this problem. So hopefully that doesn't embarrass anybody, but I think NPC has set a standard for partnering with Arkansas universities, and hopefully we'll be able to continue that standard. Other information that I'd ask you to consider is that the spirit of NPC is alive right here. We wanted to give you a visual of that today and do that in a professional and supportive way. This is truly a unique place. This is my 3rd stop as the head of a community college, and this community loves, invests, works, pushes, is part of our NPC family. It is.
Sir, I'm being told we're drawing very short on time, and I'd like to leave some time for questions at the end. I'd ask you to finalize your comments.
I will do that. Thank you. We recently completed our 10-year reaccreditation plan. There were all of our criterion and sub-criteria were met with no recommendations. We followed the process that ADHE has documented. Testimony at the legislative session pointed us that direction. I'm grateful for all of you, to my 32 colleagues in the state of Arkansas. And I'd like to very respectfully ask that you approve the recommended scope change for NPC to enable the conversation around a completion program for BSN to continue. And I'll be delighted to take any questions that you have.
Before we get to those questions, and thank goodness for Nicole Abernathy, she has pointed out that I failed to recognize one of our speakers, and I certainly would not want to exclude Senator Alan Clark from his ability to give his comments. I do apologize publicly to Senator Clark. Is Senator Clark still available to make any comments before we get to final?
I apologize. I should have explained that Senator Clark had to leave. So I'll make sure that he understands that sentiment. So.
Thank you so much. I'll now open it up to our board for any questions or comments, or any questions for National Park.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask you a question? How many commissioners or board members are still on the call here?
I do not know.
It looks like we've lost some. And I wonder if it would be best to delay this vote to the next meeting. It looks like we've only gathered. I don't know, maybe we, there's some that I don't see. Nicole, do you know what, we call a roll and see who's here?
Yes, sir. Just one moment. Chair Brodell,
Present.
Kevin Anderson, Grayson Bigger,
Present.
Dr. Jim Carr,
Here.
Dr. Jerry Cash, Dr. Kelly, Mr. Kelly Erstein,
Here.
Lori Griffin, here, Chad Hooten, Andy McNeil,
Here.
Dr. Kyle Miller, Greg Rebels.
Here.
We have 7 of the 11 board members. We still have a quorum.
Al, I'm just wondering if it's with 7-11, this is important to us and the folks in the room. Is it would be smart to delay this to the next meeting to have got a full board vote?
Well, how do you know we're going to have a full board?
Say it again.
I said, how will you know you're going to have a full board next?
Well,
week?
we normally have a lot more than 7.
Well, possibly, I
Anyway.
I understand.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Then I'd make a comment to Dr. Hogan. And I want to say, first of all, Dr. Hogan, it looks like you got about half of Hot Springs behind you back there.
Yeah.
We're glad to have them. And I want to tell them that they've got a great president in John Hogan. And I know him and appreciate him and admire him, and don't let him get away. He's a good one. Question, and then one more comment. I was thinking Henderson was doing a program on your campus. Am I not right about that? RN to BSN?
Yes, we attempted to, it took us several years to get to the point of attempting that program, and it was not offered on our campus.
Okay. And my comment is this, before the very able Al Brodell served as chairman, I served as chairman of this commission for 2 years. And if I got 2 or 3 pretty hostile letters during that time, and all 3 of them were the same thing. We need fewer 4-year colleges. Let's close some, let's combine some. Something has to happen here. We're spending way too much money. We've got too many registrars, too many admission directors. Let's combine some. And we've had, since that time, Henderson's come under the ASU umbrella, which is, I think, very good. But this is the predicament we're in as a commission here, and that is that the public sees this as an expansion of the 4-year institutions. And I think that it's kind of a problem for a state with limited resources, and they see now here's a school that's getting the head of the camel in the tent, and who's coming next to us. So anyway, I think that's our predicament.
Well, Dr. Carr, I really appreciate the kind remarks, and especially the support that you expressed for me personally. And we've talked about this in this meeting and offline. And I just want to reemphasize the college is governed by a 9-member elected board. It's a community college by statute. We have no appetite to be a university. We think the community college mission has shifted after half of a century to applied baccalaureate. That's happening in other states. So I think that there could be a case made that there are too many universities. But I'm really not trying to make an argument for or against, other than just to provide reassurance that that's not something that NPC wants to be. I don't think I could, I'm sure I couldn't get the support in this room if that's what this conversation was about. It's about patient care. It's about the community's workforce. It's about growing our own. So whether something happens a decade from now or more, I don't know what other words I can say just to assure you that that's not what we aspire to do.
Dr. Hogan, I had a follow-up question as well. I heard Dr. Chuck Welch speak about proposed legislation for this type of an effort, as it applies to policies, as it applies to procedures, as it applies to coordination, teamwork, and organization. I would ask you to comment on that proposed legislation and/or Dr. Welch's comments.
I appreciate Dr. Welch's comment. My view of what happened in the 2021 session, which Representative Cosart also referred to, is that there was a community college who was working to get a BSN proposal, determined that they needed to go the legislative route. The decision and the conversation there was enlightening. What we learned from that is that ADHE has the rules and policy in place. I probably should have known that, but I did not. So since those rules and process and policy was in place, Dr. Durden and I met with Dr. Markham, and we asked for some more specific direction. We did not have an appetite for a legislative solution. On that, Dr. Welch and I agree. So for us, it's not really a state policy or organizational issue. It's again, a workforce need. So at this point, we don't really have an appetite for legislation. And I think this is the true route to travel. Does that answer your question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I did have two more follow-up questions that I've received personally, questions that people have asked me that I think I'd love to hear your opinion on. First of all, a lot of confusion, RN versus BSN. I want to confirm that with this proposal, the proposed program coming from this scope change would not create any net new RNs, but I heard you make comments about your other program. Could you clarify those for us?
So I argue that it will create net new RNs because it will enable us to expand our current ASN program, which ends in the RN credential, because our students, our community will find our nursing program more attractive. So our plan is to expand our ASN program, ultimately produce more RNs, which has been our goal since we initiated and worked and raised funds for a partnership with a local university to provide this. So it will increase both the ASN and BSN registered nurse. That's our goal.
What has been the limiting factor in expanding the ASN program prior to this proposal?
Attracting interested students, keeping them in the community. In our conversations with them, both the individuals who leave our community, those who have a healthcare interest, we have a career center that has a pre-health program. So we study those students and their direction and ask them why they considered NPC and why they didn't. And so we factored that into our estimation that we can greatly increase the number of RNs that we're producing in this community. Somebody has to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And then my final question would be, has there been any coordination or position put forth from the nursing board?
There are nurses in the room, so they're probably really scared that I'm going to attempt to answer this question. But I do not believe this requires any action from the State Board of Nursing because the licensure would already be in place prior to the students taking the BSN program. There's a first time for everything.
Thank you, Dr. Hogan. Are there any other questions from the board?
I have some questions. And so bear with me on my questions because I'm not a part of academia nor part of, the healthcare industry. And I don't know if my questions might be more toward Dr. Markham. I don't know if, but I'd like to understand just sort of the total number of programs that we already have in the state and the gap between the number of students participating and the amount of supply, just so I can get a sense for that. And then I'd like to know too, is just sort of follow up, how much of that is really online? The way that I sort of heard one of the speakers say is that typically that people pursue this degree are doing it while they currently have a job so that they do it online. I'm just curious if we have any statistics on what's online versus what's in person.
Did you want, Dr.
Andy, I'll attempt to answer a couple of those questions.
Okay.
For 2021, we had 11 BSN programs at our public institutions. We produced, in total enrollees was 6,675 students. We graduated in 2021, 1,295 of those. We also sent out to the board, one of our members, I think it was Chairman Brodell, had requested numbers on unfilled seats, and that went out in an email, I believe, 2 days ago to you.
Okay.
But all of our BSN programs reported that they had capacity. Some of those are 100% online, some are on campus, some are hybrid models, but in all of those situations, there were available seats, if that's helpful.
And they're mostly online, and you're saying they're mostly online?
Many of our BSN programs, particularly the ones that are the RN to BSN transition, are predominantly online, yes.
And there's no additional cost at the university. That's what I heard you, Dr. Hogan, I heard you say that. Is that correct?
That's right. The college would be able to sustain this with its own funds.
Got it.
And we do not wish to become a university.
But clearly there's still a debate on whether or not this is a scope issue or not, right? It seems like that's still a question. I mean, or at least everybody has difference of opinions. Would that be a correct way to say it?
Well, could you get to it today or tomorrow? If not, you want opinion? Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that there's a difference of opinion about how the world is changing and about how higher ed needs to adapt. And whether the scope of community colleges, whether Arkansas should join the other 24 states and have workforce baccalaureate. I think that it is fair to say that we are not in agreement. Most of the time we are. And I think we're all still friends either way.
Right.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wallace.
Well, it's certainly clear you have a lot of local support. I've been on the board for a few years and I don't think there's been any time where there's been that many people that have supported something. So clearly you guys are very organized.
Well, someone is here, but it isn't me.
Well, I don't know, well, I just can, I guess, I guess I would just say that, that's
you.
a big solid sign of support.
Thank you.
That's all the questions I have right this second.
Are there any other questions from the board for Dr. Hogan or National Park College?
Just a couple of things. One, I think Andy mentioned that there wasn't any additional cost, but Dr. Hogan, in y'all's proposal, it is going to be an additional cost of approximately $125,000. Is that correct?
The proposal says 125,000. What is that for? Possible additional faculty,
Right.
which we intend to fund with tuition and fees.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. In one comment, I think that, I applaud you and your community for the support that you have there. That's amazing. And as someone who lives in a small town, I want everything I can get to be here because everything that goes somewhere else is a detriment to my community. But as a member of this coordinating board, I think one of our priorities is to coordinate education in the state of Arkansas. And I got two questions for you. And the first one is, and you may not be able to answer this one, but is there a pay difference in a BSN and an RN? And the second question is, what can you tell me as a coordinating board member that tells me this is coordinating education in the entire state?
So the very organized staff has provided a cheat sheet on a whiteboard. And so I happen to be able to tell you that BSN holders earn 25% more annually than those with only an associate degree. So bachelor's degree earners overall earn about 40% more annually in 2020 than associate degree earners. So yes, there's a significant pay advantage for those students who complete. In terms of the coordinating question, I think we're getting invited into some larger policy conversation that's really over our pay grade. I don't see this as fouling the current level of coordination, particularly since our goal is to graduate more nurses that will join other completion programs as well. So Hot Springs is a population center, the 10th largest county in the state of Arkansas. We do not now have a university presence. So we need to be focused on how we're serving the needs and dreams and workforce here to try to prevent a brain drain, to keep our economy healthy, our people healthy and thriving. So I'm afraid I'm just not an authority on how we do that from a policy perspective, but I do know this. If we just do the same things we're doing now, we're not going to be successful. The pandemic has changed everything. The student marketplace that we're dealing with is entirely different than it was even 2 years ago. So I would argue that we won't really know the answer to that question unless this board approves the scope change and subsequently in July approves the completion degree for the Bachelor of Science in Nursing at NPC.
Dr. Hogan, is this class going to be bricks and mortar, or is this an online class as well?
It will be hybrid, which is the way all of our classes are. So we adapt from on-premise to internet. Just about the pandemic has changed the way we offer. So it's very much more difficult to distinguish what is online only and what isn't. But our goal is to have a hybrid program. have expanded clinicals with our hospital partners that accommodate face-to-face classes if that is a need.
So just to clarify that though, so if does a hybrid mean that if I were a student there, I would occasionally have to be there in person, or could I be, say, living in Jonesboro and just never show up and also get the same degree?
So that means we would offer the student the option to be here in person.
Got it. So you'd have to be there. Where I'm going with this is I'm just trying to make sure that I understand this, the way I understand it is the state has a lot of capacity. It's mostly online. If we were just adding capacity, if you were just doing an online class, there's an argument that says that, geez, if it's just an online class, you could have students from a lot of different places and maybe not even there locally, right? Because locally students could decide if it's all online to go somewhere different. Versus if you're saying, no, it's an in-person thing, which would really mean that you'd really have to be local. It wouldn't be practical to live across the side of the state and go there. Am I understanding that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Trying to design it for our local population and capture more of that local population into our nursing programs.
Dr. Markham, do you believe that if we expand the scope, that we're going to have more two-year colleges that are going to ask and rationalize whatever other program that they think is the needs in their community to begin to expand those programs as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that this will definitely set a precedent and open the door. I think we heard today that the board is interested in a lot of data to support those types of decisions, and I don't expect that to stop. But yes, this will be the first of the two-year colleges, and I do anticipate there'll be additional colleges interested in this in the future.
Okay.
I wish we weren't the first.
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons to think that doing things locally make a lot of sense, and certainly there's a lot of support there. But like others have expressed, I mean, I think as a board member, I certainly have concerns, and I would echo what you said from the pandemic. You know, I look at it and say, you know, increased infrastructure investments don't seem to me to be they don't seem to be very smart in a world where I think there's going to be more online courses coupled with less students. You know, I think it's incumbent on for us to be really smart about what we do. Al, are you gonna push this vote today? How are you gonna proceed with this?
Andy, are you suggesting it might be good to delay it?
Well, I know that for me personally, I'd like to know a little bit more. You know, I mean, perhaps a lot of you were very up to speed on this thing. But I certainly don't feel that way. I certainly can vote today if that's what we want to do, but I'd like to just digest it a little bit more. It seems like it was fairly important, and you know, it's one of the few things where I think, at least for my participation in this board, where there was you know, strong feelings for and against. I don't know if I'm the only one that shares those views, but I'll just throw that out there.
Dr. Hogan, can I ask one more question, please?
Sure. I mean, I guess it's up to the chair, but.
Yeah, I know. That's why I asked Al. I don't. That's what he's going to do.
I think Al went silent again.
Yeah, I know. He's just
But
I've been talking with my mute on. I do apologize.
Well, Dr. Hogan, I want to follow up with something Andy was asking you about. If I understood you right, it's the student's option whether they take the class at the school or online. So it could be 100% online. Is that true?
No, it's not. They would have an on-premise requirement.
Okay.
And in addition to a clinical requirement.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Andy, this is Al. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
In answer to your question, I feel that the national park has done a great job in presenting. I feel like we've had a lot of questions asked and answered. My intent today was to give them the vote that they've come here to receive. We still have a quorum, but now I've heard from 2 different board members asking if the vote is appropriate today. And so I would open up for comments on that. Are there any comments from the board as to any reason why we should not vote on this today?
Al, I agree with you. I think that, you know, we've had a tremendous amount of information given to us over since the last meeting. And we've also got to digest a tremendous amount of information today. And I think that National Park has put a lot of effort into this proposal, and I think they deserve a vote today. That's my opinion.
Any other comments on the board?
Chairman, I agree. They've come very prepared and they've brought several members of the community. And I think to honor their time and commitment to this, we owe them a vote.
Anyone else? Are there any other questions for, hearing those comments, I am inclined to give them the vote that they came here for today. If any of our board members have any other questions, I am more than willing to stay on as long as it takes to get them the information that they need. Any other questions? Hearing none, I will call the question. Do I hear a motion to approve the role and scope change for National Park College?
I'd like to make that motion so we can discuss it a little bit more as a board.
Do I hear a second?
I'm going to second it.
Any discussion?
Chairman, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who's in the room, who's taken time to come out and give their opinions, both for and against. I think, you know, we've talked about 24 other states doing just this, and I think it's a timely discussion. I agree with Dr. Welch's perspective that we've got to do a better job about communicating these issues and partnerships. And I think, you know, this really stems probably at its most basic level from a breakdown in a talent pipeline. And I want us to revisit and sincerely talk about the need for more collaboration and educational overlap in the state. But I also believe that this is a really unique situation with Hot Springs being the only metro that's not served by university, that there is a severe workforce shortage. And I hear from hospital CEOs in my area all the time that they are really struggling to keep the doors open because of these nursing shortages and the cost related to travel nursing. So, you know, I know that this is going to open us up to more of this kind of discussion, but I think if we're going to really support our students and our workforce and our communities, I think it's worth having those discussions and really considering this proposal.
And I am hearing today, you know, it's a lower cost to students. You're funding it yourself, and you can fill those positions today in your community. And so that's why I'm supporting it.
Any other comments?
I'm in a real quandary because I can see the need there, but at the same time, I don't want to have 15 other colleges coming to us wanting baccalaureate programs. I don't know if our friends in Hot Springs, here's what we had in our notes today. NPC has stated it does not seek to become a regional university. The institution has also stated the wish to offer baccalaureate programs to answer the economic needs and workforce demands of the city of Hot Springs, Garland County, and the surrounding region. When it says baccalaureate programs, it doesn't say a baccalaureate program, and it doesn't say in healthcare.
Sorry.
And I'm just concerned that
Is it the
my
department?
friends in the room down there who are legislators are going to a lot more requests for a lot more BA programs. And I'm very concerned about that.
Dr. Carr, I would echo your concerns. Nobody has felt the crunch and the shortage for nursing over the last 2.5 years, and even way beyond that, than we have in both the clinic and the hospital. I absolutely am supportive of nursing programs, but I have heard you and Greg Revels both express something that is just on the forefront of my thoughts, is the coordinated effort. How do we address that need in a better effort with more coordination, with better policies and procedures, so that we understand the need and scope, not with this program and not as it applies to nursing, but as it applies to the role and scope of these two-year institutions. I think that coordination, those policies, those efforts, and what this precedent would set are the limiting factors first and foremost in my mind.
Chairman, if you would allow, I could speak to that concern.
Yes.
So first of all, I'd ask you not to hold us accountable to perhaps a poor choice in grammar. Second of all, poor choice in grammar, it's 78-page document. So, but second of all, the role and scope procedures that are outlined for ADHD they prescribe the process for application, but they do not prescribe any process for what decisions the board makes in terms of determination about the scope or what programs are allowable or not. I would say to you and reassure you right now that we can offer a bachelor's degree in nursing because we have the staff and we have the facilities. We are already providing basically the first 3 years of education, which is quite expensive. Whereas the fourth year has no overhead, and a bachelor's degree would receive higher points in a funding formula calculation. So we'll get a certain amount of points for an associate's degree, and then the funding formula would award a 4-year university basically twice that many points for only teaching 30 hours. So we look at the bachelor's degree in nursing as an opportunity for us to expand our pipeline, of course, but also to take advantage of the resources that we're already expending on preparing associate level nurses. It's just makes better financial sense for us to teach the last 30 hours. But again, we're not prepared. We do not have the faculty or staff in any given department to offer any other bachelor's degrees. As you know, once you get into Higher Learning Commission accreditation requirements for offering a bachelor's degree, you have to meet a kind of a different threshold in terms of specialization for faculty to offer a bachelor's degree. And we simply do not have the number of faculty to do that. For instance, our general psych program, we have 2 faculty members who both have PhDs, but we would require at least 8 or so to continue on into a bachelor's program. And that's one of our higher enrollment areas. That kind of investment would be prohibitive to us. So right now, the bachelor's degree in nursing is really the only thing that we are capable of expanding into. And we don't have any plans at this point to expand further.
I thank you for that. I thank you for those comments. Are there any other comments for the board? We've had a motion and a second. Any other questions?
I'm inclined to support it, but I sit there and look at some of the other. I wonder if we were going to go forward in time, and I heard you say that you had students ready and prepared, but I wonder what it will look like if we pass it, you set it up, you build it, they don't really come, and then it's just used as a leverage when any other university wants to expand, in the same way, So I think that for me, that's the biggest issue. It's not really, I think all of us can agree we need more nurses. I think we all can agree that different paths and more paths would be more helpful than less helpful. Certainly you've got plenty of support. It sounds like it's not going to cost a lot of money. It's just the scope creep's the only issue that I really have.
Response to that is that I can't predict a precedent. I don't necessarily agree that it does set a precedent, although I respect Dr. Markham's and others' opinion. And I don't think we'll know the answers to that question, the answers to those questions, until we actually have the program in place. And this coordinating board has thresholds in place for program performance and enrollment and degree production. So I don't know that we can answer those questions until we actually have a applied baccalaureate alive and well, and we can benchmark against that.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm inclined to support it. I don't know that I agree with that because I can just speak for the schools around where I live in Arkansas. And I would use that as a leverage if I wanted to expand. And I would point at this board right here. I would say, well, you did it before, why not do it again? So I know that that's what I would do if I was in your position or if I was in a similar position. But so I think it's something that we've got to take seriously. But anyway, I'll just leave it there.
I would ask, since the last time we took a roll, I think we've passed another 30-minute mark. I'm not even sure who all is on.
We still
Nicole,
have the same 7 members on. Would you like for me to take a roll?
I feel like that's necessary again. I hate to do it, but I do feel like it's necessary.
Chair Brodell,
Present.
Kevin Anderson, Grayson Bigger,
Present.
Dr. Jim Carr. I see him.
Here.
Dr. Jerry Cash. Kelly Erstein.
Here.
Lori Griffin. Here. Chad Hooten. Andy McNeil.
Here.
Dr. Kyle Miller. And Greg Rebels. Greg Rebels.
Here.
We do have 7 of the 11 board members present.
Okay. I believe we had a motion and a second. I am going to go ahead and call the question if there's no other comments from the board. All those in favor, I'd ask you signify by stating aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed signify by saying nay.
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 Do we need to do a roll call vote?
I think we should.
I believe we do. Could not hear that. Nicole, could you call the roll of those who are here?
Yes, sir. Chair Brodell,
Nay.
Grayson Bigger,
Aye.
Dr. Jim Carr,
Reluctantly opposed.
Kelly Erstein,
Nay at this point.
Lori Griffin,
Aye.
Andy McNeil,
Nay.
and Greg Rebels.
Nay.
We have 5 nays and 2 ayes.
Agenda item number 10 does not pass. I would like to comment and thank National Park College for presenting this. I heard a bunch of reluctant nays. I am one of those, and I would just reiterate my comments from before about some coordination as this applies to precedent and those future needs. I would ask, I would fall back on Dr. Markham and her team to help us with some guidance as to what that would look like and those efforts. But thank you all, and I really appreciate the presentation, your time, your effort, and all the community support down there. Thank you. I'm going to move on to
May I ask
hello?
may I ask what the next step is for NPC in this pursuit? I mean, the apologies, but more coordination and more discussion, and perhaps Dr. Markin can provide this guidance, but I'd like to have some specific steps going forward that that we can take to, to continue this conversation and have the board review this again. So I scoured your policy. I did not find an opportunity for appeal, nor did I find any restriction from appeal. So we're kind of in new territory.
Dr. Hogan, we can follow up after this. There's not an appeal process for board decisions, so their decision is final. However, you and I can talk about options for moving forward with the BSN program in the future.
Okay. Thank you all very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. We'll move on to the report of the Finance Committee. I don't believe Chad Hooten is on, so in place of Chad Hooten, I would recommend to the full board approval of agenda items 11 and 12. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion. Kelly Erstein.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. We'll move on to the report of the Academic Committee. Ms. Griffin?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Brodell. The Academic Committee has reviewed items 20 and 21, and we recommend the approval of agenda items 14 through 19.
Do I hear a second to approve agenda items 14 through 19?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all. We will now open the floor to any presidents and chancellors who wish to address the board.
They've all gone to lunch.
I believe you are right. Before we go, are there any comments from the board members?
It's a good meeting day. It was a difficult one, but a very good meeting.
Very, very difficult meeting.
I really appreciate everybody who came out and stuck with us through this meeting. And I mean, all the community members in Hot Springs, it's so impressive to see people here and to see passion for education. And I hope that this discussion leads to more collaboration and more discussion about how we can be better partners for workforce development in our communities.
I second that.
No, me too.
Here, here. Any other comments from board members?
Let's go eat.
I thank you all. The next quarterly meeting will be on July 29th, 2022. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
We will be adjourned. Thank you all.